Welcome to King County Connects, a program where we connect you with the important issues in our region. I'm Enrique Cerna. The rising cost of housing. It's a phenomenon that's changing Western Washington and has many folks concerned about property taxes. We're talking today with King County Assessor John Arthur Wilson about property taxes and much more. Thank you very much for being here. I guess you're a guy that might be on a hit list when we're talking about property taxes here, as people are not only trying to understand the tax cuts and the impact that were passed by Congress and signed by President Trump, but property taxes coming up, other issues in the legislature, concerns really about how the rising costs of housing here is affecting all of us. Let's start first with the Trump tax cuts, and that happened so fast. Now, you've called it a ripoff.
Well, because I think for thousands of King County taxpayers, with the $10,000 cap on the deductibility of state and local taxes, it really means it's going to be a huge tax shift from King County and King County services back to that other Washington. And it doesn't take much in these days in this kind of housing market with housing values here to hit that $10,000 threshold. Not my sad story, but given where we live in Seattle, and I got my wife a new car this year, when I quickly did the numbers in my head, I went, we're over 10 grand. Wow. And we don't know what kind of impact that's going to have on housing affordability. There's some speculation, well, maybe it'll depress prices. Maybe. It may well, though, not, especially in a super hot market like Seattle, have that impact. It may merely mean that we're all sending even more money to Washington, D.C.
And if you're buying a new home, then you might be able to have some, some success or help here in the first time around. But after that, middle-class people.
Yeah, and it just, in a state like Washington, it just becomes a squeeze play. And, part of what it doesn't take into consideration is when you have a region like King County where you have high values, you have a little bit above probably the median average income and that. It really creates a pincer movement on that. I was talking to some folks with the National Association of Counties, and the shame is this seems frankly very targeted toward urban counties around the United States. Los Angeles, New York, San Francisco, us. We're all going to take somewhat of a disproportional hit here.
Now, I know that one thing that you've been very concerned about, well, you're probably hearing it a lot, is the fact that property taxes. Our property taxes are going to be due.
Now you tell
soon.
me.
Yes, yeah. Remember that? Yeah. So let's talk about that, because on top of the tax cuts and then the property taxes coming up, I would imagine you're hearing from people that are very concerned about all of this and how it's going to hit them.
Absolutely, Enrique. And again, it's this compounding that's coming because there's no plan here. It's a series of things at both the federal and state level that are all kind of colliding together. And the shame is where they're going to really hit our homeowners, especially seniors on fixed incomes, first-time home buyers and all that. The good news on the one hand in terms of the value of your home is throughout the county we have rebounded past the depths of the recession of 10 years ago. Our total assessed value in King County for the first time ever topped $500 billion. We were at $534 billion of assessed value. That's a new record. But what that also means is that when you take into fact the caps that the feds have put in and then the increases that the legislature brought because of the funding of education,
clear decision.
It's really going to hammer homeowners. So we're still finalizing numbers. We'll have them done in the next couple days, but we're looking at countywide an average increase of just under 17%. Whoa. That, again, cumulatively, when you look at what's happened over the last 6 years, means that property taxes in King County have gone up roughly between 50 to 66% in that time window. That's simply not sustainable. And what worries me is it's especially going to hammer seniors who just haven't seen their benefits go up 66% in these last 6 years.
So let me go back to the Trump tax cuts. Do we fully understand the impact of those cuts?
No, we don't. And frankly, not even the IRS fully understands the impacts.
And it's going to be, it's tax season here, folks.
Yeah, I mean, this is part of what our frustration was throughout this. I mean, we were on regular calls with NACO trying to figure out, okay, what is this impact? Does it hit here? We know, for example, that it removes deductibility of home equity loans. Now, that's going to have an impact here because for a lot of people who find themselves sort of trapped in their house, the one way to do something was, well, we'll remodel and we'll go up a story or add a bedroom or something like that. Well, now you've taken away that deductibility. Well, then what do you do? We just don't know what all the ramifications are. We've been talking to like the Evans School, trying to work with them on figuring out how to get a better handle on exactly what has happened at the federal level and then how does that ripple through the state.
That's very scary, the fact that even as an assessor, you still don't really know what the impact of this is.
Well, these last 6 months, frankly, have been really frustrating in that, at the core of what I do is we set values on 700,000 pieces of property across the county. We have 163 taxing districts, but to get precise, we set levy codes for 600 separate levy codes. And these days, they still have to be manually calculated. It has been enormously frustrating this year because between what the feds have done and what the state has done, we've found we're dealing with a moving target. Right. And so even though once we got our values set, trying to figure out, okay, do we use that number for the state or do we use that number for the state has just been really difficult. And in turn, it's hard to then know for certain how that's going to impact different communities around King County.
Are your systems up to date enough to handle that?
To be honest, no. They need to be modernized. We're working off a mainframe system right now. We've modernized it into the cloud, but it's still the old system that basically only goes out 5 decimal spots to the right of the dot. We actually, to calculate accurately, need to go 10 to 12 decimals out. So we literally have 2 people on our staff, a woman named Hazel Gantz, who's just amazing. I've pleaded with her, please don't retire, please don't retire. And Hazel manually, literally, Enrique, calculates those 600 levy codes. To give you an idea how accurate she is, a couple years ago, the Department of Revenue came in and did a total audit of our tax revenues and all that, which is about 400 million, it was then $434 million. DOR estimated we might be off a little, $4,200. I'll take that.
Yeah. So as the property taxes then are set, and people knowing that there's going to be this huge increase, is there a way for folks to pay that over time? Because, not everybody has the money to kind of shell it out right away.
We're trying to look at how we might be able to set that up, and we've been working with the Treasury office in the executive branch to try to see whether we can take time payments and that. If you're paying your taxes through an escrow account through your mortgage, they will do that in that they will adjust that. You'll get a notice, while tax bills will go out in mid-February, you'll probably get a notice from your escrow company sometime in April that will be adjusting your escrow up.
And there is a shortage and you better...
Yeah, a shortage in your account and you're going to need to do a true up and that. But it's one of the things that we're looking at is how can we make it somehow easier for people to pay their property taxes rather than the twice-a-year model to pay them on a monthly basis.
Now, I know one thing that you're concerned about, too, is the targeting of seniors, particularly as these taxes go up, and those speculators that might come in and say, hey, I got a deal for you. Talk about that.
That really scares me, Enrique, because we're going to drop bills in mid-February. For some seniors, frankly, I think it's going to cause a panic. They're going to look and go, how am I going to pay that first payment at the end of February? And in many cases, these are people who have their home paid off. Right. but their tax bill is going to be probably higher than they ever dreamed their mortgage payment was. And what worries me and scares me and angers me, frankly, is you're going to see predatory buyers move in on these people. And they're going to say, don't worry, ma'am, sir, we know that's due at the end of April, but we've got a deal for you. You know, just sign here. We'll close in 30 days, all cash transaction, and we'll pay your property taxes in April. And they'll offer them, though, a fraction of what that house is actually worth. They'll literally rip them off for potentially thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that scares me both because it's wrong and we've got so damn few tools to fight back. And we really need to get the word out to seniors. If somebody comes at you hard and fast with an offer to buy your property in the next 2 months or so, stop, wait, take a deep breath, and talk to someone. Talk to somebody in your family, talk to a neighbor, talk to a banker, talk to somebody, and see, does that really make sense for you? Right. Don't just sign something that gets thrust across the table at you.
Don't jump at this. Have we seen this happen in other parts of the country or other places?
You see some of it has happened in other parts of the country. It's again here where what we've inadvertently created with no plan to it is, if you will, the perfect storm.
Right.
And you know, you're going to have that impact on single family homeowners. I also worry what it's going to do to affordability of rental housing, because for those older apartments, often owned by kind of mom and pop investors, they're going to get this bill too. And this may become the tipping point where they just say, you know what, it's not worth it anymore. Let's sell it.
Life is too short.
Yeah, and the reality is what will happen there is a developer will come in, they'll buy it. They'll buy it for market, but then what they'll do is they'll take that lovely old building that was at an affordable rate, they'll tear it down and put up a shiny new building. And even though it will have affordable in it, it won't be anywhere near the affordability of what it's replaced.
This is something that you are extremely passionate about, trying to get the word out.
I'm just trying to get the kids out of my basement.
I'm trying to get the one out of my other bedroom. I don't think he's ever going to leave, you know, so yeah.
It is, well, because you look at how hard it has become, and it's both across the spectrum, but particularly for young people and for seniors. We sadly are increasingly becoming a county where they can't afford a place at the table here. And that's not right. And that has significant, to me, detrimental impacts on the long-term viability of this community, that we hollow out and make it so that young people can't afford to raise a family here anymore and old people can't afford to age in place. And I think we're a better people than that.
Yeah. You were talking about someone from your own staff who was going to retire and has said, I got to get out of King County.
Yeah, you know, and he was kind of, I said, no, Harry, I understand. But he said, look, here's the deal, John. You know, I'm going to sell my house and I'm going to go to Kittitas or someplace where I can buy a nice house for much less money, and then I'm going to travel. But he said, I can't afford in my retirement years to tie all my money up in a house. And I don't think he's unique.
Right. In fact, I think that's a growing issue that's happening here. You have been spending time down in the legislature. It's a short session, but what are your main issues down there?
The couple primary things we've been working on is how to improve the present senior and disabled vet program. Part of the problem is as the program is right now, there is a single dollar threshold of roughly $40,000. The criteria is you have to be the owner-occupant, 61 and older, and a $40,000 a year household income. For so many people in King County, frankly, that $40,000 threshold is too low. On the other hand, in other parts of the state, $40,000 is probably too high. So what we've tried to do is index it to the average median income of each county. So in King County, that had raised that income threshold to about $61,000 a year. We think it would allow us to bring in probably an additional 11,000 people into the program. The other thing we're doing, and it was something that we discovered from digging around a bit, is I was frankly appalled at the number of people we have enrolled in the Veterans Disability Program, because that number, Enrique, is 0.
Well, now this was something that was discovered by your interns?
Yeah, we have 2 amazing veteran interns, and we were looking at, okay, under the present state law, you have to be 100% disabled as a vet. Well, that means even if you've lost both legs and both arms, you're only at 80%.
Oh, jeez.
And so we said, that's not right. For God's sakes, if you have fought for this country and literally put your life on the line and come back a wounded warrior, that we require you to be in an almost vegetable state before we would give you a tax break just doesn't skew with me. And so we've been down there trying to argue to lower that to at least 70%. So that we could get more veterans in the program. But I was appalled when one of our vets did the research. We don't have a single person in all of King County that's qualified under the Veterans Program exemption. That's wrong.
Yeah, that's just not right at all. Other issues that you're looking at down there, or is this the main one, or these are the ones that you're going after? It's a short session.
Yeah, I mean, it's again trying to work with the legislature in making sure they understand what the impacts on the property tax are. We're looking at other things that down the road we may want to try to do. We've talked around the concept of a homestead exemption to try to give all taxpayers some kind of break. But one of the challenges to kind of loop back is we still don't understand all the impacts of the Trump tax package. And when we add in the impact that the McCleary bill is going to have. So like one of the things that we're going to launch here in just a few weeks, around the 1st of February, is what we call a taxpayer transparency tool. Because one of the things that has irked me is whenever we put special levies up for vote, we tend to refer to how many lattes it is, And when you get the bill, you go, my God, that's 167 lattes. No wonder I'm so buzzed. And what I said is, look, there's got to be a way we can do this. So we're going to create an online tool where we simply be able to put your address in and it'll say, oh, Enrique, here's where you live. Here's what's on the ballot for you next to vote on. Pick what you'll vote on. Just click on X and then hit calculate. And then it will go back. It'll take your present tax bill. It'll calculate what that increase would be to it. It'll come back and bring you up. Here's the total change. Here's the total dollar amount. Here's what that increase is per item. And then here's what your total tax bill is and what it goes to. Because part of what we want people to have a better understanding of is what all goes in your property tax. Roughly 52% of your property tax bill is made up of voter-approved measures. Now, some of that's because in some communities they have moved a lot of things off of their core current expense budget into more and more levies. Frankly, the city of Seattle has done that. So in Seattle, you have a transportation tax, a parks tax, a library tax, a family and children's levy tax. All of those sit on top of the base property tax for the city. So we want people to have a better idea of what it is. It's not to take a position for or against, but to understand here's what that's going to mean to you. Because one of my concerns is that the cumulative impact of property taxes is reaching a point where it's not sustainable.
Right. Yeah. One of the things you have talked about too is in dealing with the whole issue of homelessness in this county, which is a serious problem, also a serious problem, throughout the city of Seattle, and then spreading throughout the West Coast as well, is looking at areas that might be available. And how might be able to use those to help folks.
So we've done a couple of things. The assessor's office is an amazing, if you will, treasure trove of data, because we literally have data on every single piece of property in the county, whether it's publicly owned or privately owned. And historically, we hadn't done much with that other than to send you a tax bill. Right. And I said, there's more we can do with that. And so, part of what we did is we were working with council member Bagshaw in the city of Seattle. We identified 300 sites for her in the city of Seattle that were publicly owned, 20,000 square feet or larger, and were within a half mile of transportation. We know there are properties out there that could be available, and what we're trying to do is socialize that more with local governments and nonprofit agencies to give them a chance to see where can we put affordable housing.
How did you come up with this concept, or how did it come up, the possibility of as it being something we could look at?
Some of it is from when I worked in the department before. Some of it was also, frankly, when I was chief of staff to Executive Ron Sims. one of the things I recognized when I worked for Ron was you often have county agencies that buy property for a specific project. The project comes and goes, but the property stays. It was maybe used as a staging area in that. And we've got an example of a couple pieces like that. One of the pieces of legislation actually we're working on in Olympia and been working on with the speaker is to allow utilities like Seattle City Light to surplus that property and not necessarily have to get full recovery, but allow interagency fund transfers so that some of those properties could be used for housing.
You know, it just seems like there's taxes, and that you can get tax fatigue in this region in particular. Do we need to take a look at how all of this is being used, particularly how we depend on property taxes to pay for things? Are you doing enough? Is the county executive putting some focus on that?
Yeah. Actually, the county executive and I have started to forge a partnership to look at how do you modernize our government system of both service delivery, but also obviously of revenue, because it's become, particularly at the county level, way too dependent upon the property tax, and it's not sustainable. And part of it is the reality that no one has ever really designed our tax system. It has just sort of happened. And in part, it was because our economy has fundamentally changed. We used to be a resource-based economy of timber, fish, agriculture. We're not that these days. I mean, we have now convenience stores that you don't even have checkout in.
Yeah.
And we, two examples I use quickly is 911's a vital service to the county. We have historically funded it with a tax on both cell phones, but also landlines. But what's happened to that landline revenue? It's disappearing, and it's not going to come back. There's not going to be a late surge in 5 years from now of people, I got to have a landline. And so we've got to rethink how we fund things so that they more realistically align with how our economy actually works and how the services we want for that economy need to be provided.
I'm one of those that got rid of my landline.
I hear you.
And I'm sure I'm not alone here and there too. So as we go into this period of the property taxes being due, beside the fact that you want to be hiding, because I'm sure people want to talk to you about that, and not a nice way. But what's your advice to folks as they get their tax bill?
So double check. You can't appeal your tax bill per se, but we'll also be sending out this year your reval notice. Double check and see that we've got your value right. Also, if you're having trouble, contact the county and let's see whether we can work with you on how we can organize payments and that. We really want to avoid people falling into tax foreclosure. Now, you can miss your taxes for up to 3 years before you go into tax foreclosure, but that's a terrible, terrible place to be. And I'd also say, again, back to the quick sale artist, be careful, really careful, folks, of anybody that comes at you and says, man, have I got a deal for you that's going to be the salvation. That life ring may well have a concrete brick attached to it.
Right. But the door is open in case someone needs to say, hey, I need to talk to you about, I don't know how I can pay this.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk. The trouble is that, frankly, we've got limited resources to be able to do that. But we're trying to also work with the social service community to see where there may be some opportunities where they can help, at least in a bridge situation or something like that.
John Arthur Wilson, King County Assessor, thank you very much. You make taxes kind of interesting and scary, but no, it's at least we know that there's a lot at play here, and I guess we still have to find out what is in that tax bill that's coming out of Washington, D.C. to really understand what that means to us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, all right, we appreciate you being here. All right, thank you for joining us for this edition of King County Connects. Visit us online at kingcounty.gov/KCTV. I'm Enrique Cerna. We'll talk again next time.